When you've spent years serving your country. When you've carried the weight of sacrifice, danger, and pride. Something as simple as raising your flag outside your own home feels sacred. For me, that flag is not just a piece of fabric fluttering in the wind. It is my reminder of nights I never thought I'd survive, of friends I lost, and of the oath I took to defend the land I love. So when I moved into this quiet neighborhood, I placed my flag proudly in front of my porch, standing tall and shining in the morning light. But little did I know, that flag was about to spark a storm I never expected. It began on a Saturday morning. I was sipping coffee, enjoying the calm after weeks of restless nights, when I heard the sharp knock on my door. Standing outside was a woman I had only seen in passing. Her arms were crossed tightly, her lips pursed like she had been waiting for this moment. Her name was Karen, and with one look, I could already tell this wasn't going to be a friendly visit. She pointed at my flag with a scowl and said, "You need to take that down. It's too big, it's distracting, and it's against the neighborhood guidelines." At first, I thought she must be joking. Who complains about a flag? Who sees something that represents sacrifice and freedom and calls it a distraction? But the tone in her voice told me she was dead serious. She didn't see my flag as a symbol of pride, she saw it as a problem. I tried to explain calmly, telling her it wasn't just decoration. I told her I had served under that flag, fought under it, bled for it. That for me. Lowering it wasn't just about following a guideline, it was about erasing everything it meant. But Karen wasn't moved. She raised her eyebrows and repeated that rules are rules, and if I didn't take it down, she would report me to the HOA. I stood there silent for a moment, holding back the flood of emotions rising inside me. The anger, the disbelief, the insult. I wanted to shout, to tell her she had no idea what that flag meant to me or to thousands like me. But instead, I just looked her in the eye and told her she had made a mistake picking this fight. That night, I couldn't sleep. Her words echoed in my mind. Report me for what? Loving my country. For honoring the men and women who never made it back. For raising a symbol that gave me strength when everything else was falling apart. As I lay there, staring at the ceiling, memories of my service flooded back. The long marches, the endless heat, the sound of gunfire, and the moments when I clutched that very flag for comfort in the darkest hours. I remembered how it felt to watch my brothers fold it carefully at funerals, handing it to grieving families. That flag was not negotiable. Not to me. The next morning, I decided I wouldn't be intimidated. I raised the flag even higher, letting it fly strong in the morning breeze. And sure enough, within an hour, Karen was back. This time, she had her phone in her hand, recording as she marched up my driveway. "You're going to regret this," she snapped. "I'm filing a complaint right now." She held her phone like a weapon, trying to capture my reaction. But instead of reacting with anger, I smiled and told her, "Go ahead, make your complaint. But let me make something clear, you're not just asking me to take down fabric. You're asking me to erase my story." Her face twisted with annoyance. She muttered something under her breath and stormed off, phone still in hand. That's when I realized this wasn't going to be just a simple disagreement. This was going to be a battle between someone who didn't understand the meaning of sacrifice and someone who had lived it. For the next few days, tension filled the air. I could see her peeking through her curtains whenever I stepped outside. Neighbors began to whisper, some avoiding me, others offering quiet nods of support. It became clear that my flag had become the center of a neighborhood divide. And while part of me wanted to avoid conflict, another part of me, the soldier in me, refused to surrender. The letter came a week later, a neatly folded notice from the HOA, stamped and signed, demanding that I remove my flag within 10 days, or face fines. I held that paper in my hand, and for a moment, I felt that old rush of adrenaline, the same rush I felt before stepping onto the battlefield. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about principle. It's about standing firm, no matter the odds. I decided that if Karen wanted a fight, she was going to get one. But not the kind of fight she expected. I wasn't going to shout or curse or lose control. I was going to fight the way I had been trained, with discipline, with honor, and with unshakable resolve. I pulled out my old medals, my discharge papers, and photographs from my years of service. I laid them on the table, reminding myself of the journey that brought me here. Every scar on my body, every sleepless night, every tear shed for fallen friends, they all gave me the strength to face this challenge head-on. By the time the sun set that night, my decision was clear. I wasn't just keeping the flag up for myself. I was keeping it up for every veteran who came home to a world that sometimes forgets what they gave. I was keeping it up for the families who look at that flag and remember the ones they lost. And I was keeping it up to remind people like Karen that freedom isn't free, it's earned. And it's defended every single day. The days that followed were full of stares, whispers, and pressure. But I stood tall, walking past my flag with my head held high. Karen might have thought she could scare me into silence, but she had no idea who she was dealing with. I wasn't just a homeowner in her neighborhood. I was a decorated veteran. And I wasn't about to let her win this battle. What happened next shocked even me. The shock came just 2 days after the HOA notice. I walked out to grab the mail, and there on my porch was a folded piece of paper tucked into my doorframe. No envelope, no signature, just scribbled words in messy handwriting. Take it down. Or else I froze for a moment, reading those 4 words over and over. This wasn't just about a complaint anymore. It had turned into something uglier. Someone in the neighborhood wasn't just annoyed by my flag, they were threatening me. I clenched the note in my hand and looked around the quiet street. The houses stood still, blinds half closed, cars neatly lined in driveways. On the surface, everything seemed normal. But now I knew there was hostility hidden behind those windows. I wondered if Karen had written the note herself, or if she had stirred others to join her crusade. Either way, I wasn't going to be intimidated. Not by paper threats, not by whispers, not by rules written to erase the things that matter most. I taped the note to my fridge as a reminder. Not of fear, but of the fight I was in. Every morning I'd see those words, and every morning they would fuel my resolve. I raised my flag even higher that day, letting it stretch proudly in the wind. It wasn't defiance, it was a declaration. But as the days passed, the tension grew. Karen wasn't done. She came back, this time with 2 other HOA members by her side. They stood in my yard like they owned it, pointing, gesturing, and taking photos of the pole. I stepped outside, calm but firm, and asked them what they thought they were doing. One of them, a man in a polo shirt and sunglasses, said flatly, "You've violated the community code. If you don't comply, fines will escalate, and legal action could follow." I looked at him and asked, "Do you know what this flag means? Do you understand what it represents?" He avoided my eyes and repeated the same rehearsed line about rules and compliance. Karen smirked from behind him like she had already won, but I wasn't about to argue on my lawn. I told them to leave and that if they had an issue, they could take it up in writing. My voice was steady, but inside I could feel the old soldier in me rising again. They thought this was just about paperwork and fines. They had no idea this was about honor. That night, I sat down with my laptop and began writing my response. But it wasn't just to the HOA, it was to everyone in the neighborhood. I poured my heart into that letter. I told them about my years of service, about the men I'd lost, about the flag ceremonies that still haunt me in the dead of night. I explained why this flag wasn't just decoration, but a lifeline, a memory, a symbol of sacrifice. I wrote not as a homeowner, but as a veteran, speaking from the depths of his soul. When I finished, I printed dozens of copies and slipped them into mailboxes up and down the street. If Karen wanted to silence me, then I was going to make sure my voice was louder than ever. The next morning, the shift was immediate. As I walked out to my porch, neighbors who had avoided me before now gave small nods or even words of support. One older man across the street saluted me silently. A woman walking her dog stopped to say her father was a veteran too, and she stood with me. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't fighting this battle alone. But Karen, of course, wasn't finished. That afternoon, she stormed up my driveway once more, waving a letter in her hand. "You think you can turn people against me?" she shouted. "You're making this neighborhood miserable." I didn't flinch. I told her plainly, "This isn't about you. It's about respect. And if respect is miserable for you, that says more about you than me." Her face turned red with anger. She muttered that this wasn't over and stomped back to her house. I knew then that she wasn't going to stop until she either got her way or was forced to back down. The following days were a strange mix of hostility and support. I'd find nasty notes left on my car windshield, but also pies and cookies dropped off at my door by kind neighbors who thanked me for standing strong. It was like the whole street had been pulled into a war they didn't ask for, and Karen was desperate to claim victory. Then came the summons, an official notice of a hearing with the HOA board. I was ordered to appear, to defend myself, to explain why my flag violated their codes. The hearing was set for the following week. I remember holding that letter in my hands, feeling the weight of it. This was no longer just a neighborhood squabble. This was official. This was a fight I couldn't walk away from, and I knew that if I lost, it would set a precedent not just for me, but for every veteran in every neighborhood where people like Karen tried to erase the meaning of the flag. I spent the next few days preparing. I gathered every document I had: proof of service, letters of commendation, photos from deployment, even the folded flag I had received at my best friend's funeral. If they wanted me to explain, then I would show them everything. I would bear the truth they couldn't deny. But in the quiet hours of the night, doubt crept in. What if the board sided with Karen? What if they fined me until I couldn't pay? What if they forced me to take it down? I stared at the flag outside my window, illuminated by a small spotlight in the yard, and whispered to myself, "Not without a fight. Not without a fight." As the hearing approached, the neighborhood seemed to buzz with anticipation. Some neighbors wished me luck when I passed them, while others avoided eye contact, as if siding with Karen silently. And Karen herself. She walked around with a smug confidence, as if she could already see my flag being lowered. Her victory sealed. But I had something she didn't. I had the truth. I had sacrifice. I had the kind of strength that isn't written in HOA guidelines but carved into the heart of anyone who has stood in the line of duty. On the day of the hearing, I put on my old dress uniform. It had been years since I wore it, but as I buttoned the jacket and straightened the medals pinned to my chest, I felt a surge of pride. This wasn't just about defending my property. This was about defending my story, my brothers and sisters in arms, and the very symbol that tied us all together. Walking into that boardroom, I could see Karen sitting smugly in the front row, arms folded, waiting for the board to deliver the verdict she wanted. But what happened inside that room was something she never saw coming. The boardroom was small but tense, with rows of folding chairs set up for neighbors and HOA members. The flagpole outside my house had turned into the biggest controversy the neighborhood had ever seen, and everyone wanted to watch it unfold. I walked in wearing my uniform, each medal polished, each ribbon straightened, every detail a reminder of the years I had given. A hush fell over the room, and I could feel eyes following me as I took my seat at the front dot. Karen was there too. Arms crossed, lips curled in a satisfied smirk. She didn't say a word, but her expression spoke volumes. She believed this was the day I would be forced to bow to her demands. The chairman of the board cleared his throat and began. He listed the complaint: a violation of neighborhood aesthetic standards, a failure to comply with HOA regulations, an installation not approved by the committee. His voice was flat, procedural, like it was just another line item on an agenda. But for me, it was far more than that. When he finally looked at me and asked for my response, I stood. Slowly, deliberately, I pulled a folder from my bag and placed it on the table in front of me. I began not with anger, but with a story. I told them about the first time I saw the flag raised at dawn during basic training, how the sound of the bugle echoed through the air, filling us with pride and purpose. I spoke of the flag-draped coffins I had saluted, each one carrying a brother who never made it home. I pulled out a photograph of my friend James, whose flag had been folded and placed into his mother's trembling hands. The room was silent. Even the board members, who had seemed indifferent now, leaned in, listening. I continued, explaining how my flag wasn't just fabric on a pole. It was a piece of my history, a symbol of blood, sweat, and sacrifice. I told them that taking it down wasn't just about following rules, it was about erasing part of who I was. Karen rolled her eyes loudly, muttering under her breath. "Dramatics," she scoffed. But her voice sounded weaker this time, as if even she could feel the tide turning. I didn't stop. I pulled out the folded flag I had received at James's funeral. My hands shook slightly as I placed it on the table. "This," I said, "is not decoration. This is the price of freedom. And if you tell me to take down my flag, you're not just telling me to remove Clothier, telling me to forget him. Forget them all, and I will not do that." The silence that followed was heavy but powerful. For the first time, Karen had no words. One of the board members, a man I had seen jogging through the neighborhood, cleared his throat. His voice cracked slightly as he said, "My father was in Vietnam. He never talked about it much, but I get it now. I get why this matters." Another board member, a woman with glasses perched on her nose, adjusted her papers nervously. Technically, the bylaws don't specifically forbid flagpoles. They just require approval. Maybe this case deserves reconsideration. Karen shot up from her chair, furious. "This is ridiculous. He broke the rules. It doesn't matter what sob story he tells. Rules are rules, and if we let him get away with this, the whole neighborhood will be a circus." I turned and looked her straight in the eyes. Calmly, firmly, I said, "The only circus here is trying to punish a man for honoring his service and his country. This flag doesn't harm you. It doesn't harm anyone. The only thing it does is remind us all of the cost of freedom. If that offends you, then maybe the problem isn't the flag at your heart." Gasps echoed in the room. Karen's face turned beet red, but she didn't respond. She couldn't. The board deliberated in private for a few minutes that felt like hours. Finally, they returned, papers in hand. The chairman's voice was steady as he delivered their decision. "The board has voted unanimously. The flagpole is permitted to remain. The complaint is dismissed." The room erupted. Some clapped softly. Others nodded with relief. A few even stood. I exhaled slowly, the weight I had carried for weeks finally lifting. Karen, on the other hand, stormed out, her heels clicking angrily against the tile floor. She didn't look at me, didn't say a word. For once, her crusade had failed. After the hearing, neighbors approached me one by one. They shook my hand, thanked me for my service, and admitted they hadn't realized how deep the issue really went. One older woman said softly, "My husband would have been proud of you." Another man told me, "You reminded us what matters. Don't ever lower that flag." When I returned home that evening, the sun was setting, casting golden light. Across the street, my flag caught the glow perfectly, rippling gently in the breeze. I stood there for a long time, just watching it, feeling the kind of peace I hadn't felt since this whole ordeal began. But the truth is, this wasn't just about winning against Karen. It wasn't just about keeping a pole in my yard. It was about something far greater. It was about standing up for what matters when it would be easier to stay quiet. It was about reminding people that symbols aren't meaningless. They carry stories, lives, and sacrifices we should never forget. In the days that followed, I noticed more flags appearing around the neighborhood. Small ones in gardens, larger ones on porches. It was as if my fight had reminded people of something they had forgotten. Karen rarely showed her face anymore, and when she did, she avoided my eyes. Her power had been broken, not by defiance, but by truth. Every morning since, I've made it a ritual. I walk out, look at my flag, and raise it high if the wind has slackened. And every morning, I remember the friends I lost, the battles I fought, and the freedom we all share. Maybe Karen thought a flag was just fabric. Maybe she thought rules mattered more than respect. But she was wrong, because at the end of the SAF day, it's not the rules we live, for it's the principles we defend. And mine will always be clear. This flag stays. So if you ask me what happened after Karen complained about my flag, I'll tell you this: I didn't just keep the flag up. I reminded an entire neighborhood what it means to stand for something. And that, more than any victory, is what makes me proud. And as the sun sets each night, painting the sky in shades of red, white, and blue, I whisper to myself the same words I spoke the day I enlisted. For them, for us, for freedom.